So welcome back to Fatal Plymouth Friday. In today's case, we're going to be talking about Antoinette Frank, also known as one of the killer cops from New Orleans. And so, yeah, there's a lot of details in this case, so let's just go and get started.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed. Think you're something out of my nightmares, standing right there. But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, then will you get bored of killing me?
So Antoinette Renee Frank was born on April 30th, 1971. Her father, Adam Frank Sr., had actually served in the military and ended up getting PTSD as a result of it, which is very common. And so her mother was said to have actually left him because of this. And so, obviously, at this point, the family apparently got dysfunctional. And so it is even said, but never really proven, that apparently he was abusive physically, but apparently had also impregnated his own daughter several times, and she ended up having to get an abortion each time.
I am disgusted.
From a young age, it says that she actually wanted to be a police officer, but of course her dad was against this.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
And the reason believed behind that, apparently her brother had warrants out for his arrest for attempted manslaughter.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
In June of 1992, Antoinette and her father moved into the house that she was living at when the situation occurred. She apparently went against her father's wishes and actually applied for being a police officer anyway, but ended up getting rejected.
Rejected! Rejected! Yeah, you just got rejected! R-E-J-E-C-T-E-D rejected! R-E-J-E-C-T-E-D rejected!
All right.
This is said to be because her test came back to be superficial and shallow, which is the last thing you need if you're going to be a police officer. And also apparently she lied about getting fired from apparently Walmart for stealing. It is said that she actually had left a suicide note for her father and apparently planned on jumping off of a office building.
Everything's wrong. The stress of my modern office has caused me to go into a depression.
Depression? Isn't that just a fancy word for feeling bummed out?
Dwight, you ignorant slut.
But apparently she came back the next day, and luckily for her, but unfortunately for the city of New Orleans, apparently she got hired through a private party, and that's how she got through, because they were that desperate for officers. Because February 7, 1993 is when she officially came onto the force. It was soon revealed after she started working that she actually wasn't really a good officer and that she was actually very timid, which, again, that's two things you don't really need if you're going to be an officer, especially in a crime-filled city like New Orleans. During June of 1993, her father apparently had went missing for the last time. But when she made the report that she last saw him of August. So there comes another person to this case. His name is Rogers LaCaze Jr. Yeah, Jr. And he was 17, and she's Antoinette's in her 20s. So so Roger LaCaze and Antoinette were basically friends, and so Roger basically was living with his brother because his mother kicked him out of the house for using said drugs. And so it was believed that Rogers and Antoinette were abusing the authority that Antoinette has a police officer to steal drugs from other drug dealers. Some gifts, and even let him answer the police radio, which obviously he shouldn't. And whenever he was with her, which apparently was a lot from what I read, she would either claim that he was either a trainee, so he was training to be a police officer, or that he was her nephew. So, of course, it ended up getting to a point where their relationship ended up turning up sexual and allegedly even had sex in the back of the police car.
What's going on? Y'all are going to jail! Period!
And so, despite the obvious close relationship the two of them have now, she wanted to end up leaving New Orleans because, of course, New Orleans is not safe. On November 5th, 1994, there was an incident where Rogers was actually said to have been shot.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
And so, of course, Antoinette had a little side job. She was doing security for a Vietnamese restaurant with her coworker, Ronnie Williams Jr., who was in charge of the schedule. And so because Ronnie was actually in charge of the schedule, he was actually getting more hours. And so, of course, he was getting more pay.
He would do it too for a check. I was an employee. And I was going to get employee of the month. And that's on period.
And so she wasn't having the side job just to be having some little side money. She actually needed it because a lot of officers actually needed it just to be able to even pay the bills, because apparently that's how low you were paid for being a police officer in New Orleans. She would even get food, like free food, money if she needed it, and birthday presents. The family, for some reason, didn't actually trust banks, so they actually had all their money like hidden somewhere. And apparently, in the weeks leading up to the incident, Antoinette had actually went out and bought some 9mm bullets while she was still in uniform.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
2 weeks before the incident, she went and stole a gun, because she already had the bullet, so she just needed the gun now. Stole said gun from the evidence room, and then went and reported it stolen.
Really, nigga?
Roger apparently was there when the report was made. It said that Roger apparently got a new job and actually went out with Antoinette to celebrate him getting a new job. And then it also said something about him hanging out with friends at a pool. And so a lot of people don't know this, but apparently there's a video that's currently on YouTube, way back from like 2009, and apparently it was ran by Roger Lacaze's father. This video also claims that he was actually coerced into confessing because he was getting beat while being handcuffed, and something about his mother's life being. And so I, of course, left that video down below so you don't have to struggle to go look for it. Now I'm going to tell the version that most people, including myself, believe happened. On May 3rd, 1995, Antoinette called to see if she was needed for the night, but of course they told her, no, Ronnie's working, and apparently that had made her angry. Forgot to mention, Ronnie actually had a child like 2 weeks previous to the incident happening, so he felt that he needed the extra money because, kids are expensive. As Ronnie was getting his money from Chow, which is one of the women that was working there that night, Frank apparently came in with Rogers to get some food, and they brought the food to her. Chow apparently was instantly suspicious of Rogers because of his gold teeth, which, I mean, having gold teeth doesn't make you a bad person, but apparently in New Orleans, having gold teeth was a common sign that you were a gangster, and also the fact that he apparently was constantly staring.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
So after the two left, after eating their food, apparently Antoinette had actually called several times and even returned back twice. And so because of this, Chow had hid the money in the microwave because she just had that feeling that something was wrong. It soon returned a third time, and Chow knew for a fact okay, something suspicious going on. She told Ronnie and her brother not to let them in, but apparently her brother had soon shouted her name, trying to get her attention. And then apparently during one of those 3 visits, Antoinette had somehow stolen a key, so she didn't even need one of them to let her in. She let herself in. Unbeknownst to Frank, Rogers actually took Ronnie's gun and wallet. Frank actually ran back to the front to see what was going on, because she had heard the gunshot. She was thinking the possibility that Rogers may have gotten injured, and so that gave Chow, the one that I mentioned earlier, and her brother enough time to run back into the walk-in freezer and turn off the lights before doing so. But unfortunately, there were also 2 more siblings, Ha, which was 20, she was 24, and then you had Kong, who was 17. And so, of course, the last 2 that I just mentioned, Frank got to them before they could leave, unfortunately. And so Kong, the 17-year-old, he actually was playing football. He had actually played football and actually was active in the church and actually wanted to be a priest. And then his sister wanted to be a nun. Frank, of course, demanded to know where the money was, but neither of them knew where she put it. Kong was shot 4 times and Ha was shot 3 times. Ha, of course, she died instantly, and then Kong was still fighting for his life before, of course, dying later on. It is apparently also said that she actually went back and shot him 2 more times in the head, and that is believed to be obviously what killed him. Frank and Rogers ended up leaving with the money they were looking for. Kwok apparently left once he felt it was safe, and they ran to go to a friend's house and also call the police. Chow, of course, tried to call the police, but there was no service in the freezer. Frank went to go drop Rogers off, and then apparently heard about a call about the shooting that they had just committed on the police radio. And so Rogers, apparently during that time, had apparently used Ronnie's credit card that he had stolen, and they know for a fact that he did it because he was caught on camera using it.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
She returned to the scene of the crime, parking and entering in through the back. She came in just as Chow was looking for help. Once Chow saw her, she then ran in front. She ran out the front to the other officers, and then luckily, and then of course the officers, they thought that they didn't think that Antoinette was obviously a suspect right off the bat. They thought that she was an officer that just happened to be on the scene, and so they thought they would get a good lead. Officers are apparently trained to get like good descriptions of people, so they thought it was a really good thing that there just happened to be an officer on the scene. She then claimed that she was getting like a drink, but then heard gunshots, and she tried to get like all the employees to the back, but the 2 victims that had passed away, they apparently weren't listening.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
She then said that she actually drove to the station to report what happened. However, she did have a cell phone and like a radio on her, so she was asked like, why would you drive all the way to the station instead of just like calling in?
Gotcha, bitch!
She also asked Chow if she was okay.
Oh my god! Wow!
And then of course Chow was like, why would you ask if I was okay? Like, you were here. So then of course that caused suspicion, and then Chow and Antoinette are questioned separately while in the restaurant. Frank was eventually taken to the station where she confessed and actually told about Roger's role, like the role that he played and the deaths, and then had actually said where she dropped him off at. So then of course the 2 of them blame it on each other, like, he blames it on her, she blames it on him, and then she claims that she only shot the siblings because Roger apparently had a gun pointed to his head.
Bullshit.
So she and Roger are obviously arrested and both tried separately. Roger of course claims that she acted all alone, and they both ended up being sentenced to death.
Death to all of them.
A year after the incident, human remains were actually found under the house that were believed to be of her father.
And
They said the only reason the remains were actually found was that a dog had found a bone, and they gave the bone to like an 11-year-old boy, which obviously knew like that seemed suspicious, and then he went and told, and that's how police got called. They were then sent to Louisiana State University to see if they could identify the body, see like cause of death, to see if it was in fact her father, and somehow to this day the remains still are unidentified. On October 18, 2006, they actually claimed that her death sentence should be overturned due to the fact that there was like lack of state funding to even help prepare for the trial.
boy, if you don't get
On May 22nd, 2007, the Louisiana Supreme Court said that her death sentence should still be held. Her death warrant was eventually signed on April 15, 2008 by Judge Frank Mario for her to be killed by lethal injection on July 15, 2008. Louisiana Supreme Court actually made appeals for a 90-day stay, and the appeals apparently starting like the following month. Once those days were over, a second death warrant was signed by the same judge. The death warrants actually ended up being canceled on November 25th, 2008 by the same judge due to appeals. So Frank, of course, knowing that this man was the one that signed both her death warrants, she wanted him taken off the case. It was denied at first, but he was later ended up taken off in 2010. Due to it not being completely clear if he even had connections with the guns that were used in the murders.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Rogers himself had actually claimed that he was just as innocent as the victims that were killed that night.
Bullshit.
And as you know, this was like, and as you all, this is New Orleans, so most people know New Orleans for like Hurricane Katrina. The restaurant actually stayed open until Hurricane Katrina, and then apparently like looters, which I didn't even know there were looters during this time, but apparently there were looters, and some of the looters had stole jewelry that the victims had worn on the night they were killed.
I am disgusted.
Kwok and his mother would eventually sell like the restaurant and end up moving to a place where they end up feeling safer. And in 2020, there was a movie based off these murders called Blood on Her Badge. But yeah, that's the case of Antoinette Frank, the killer cop from New Orleans. And I hope you guys learned something new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.